when you're trying to pull a list or tap into your CRM or wherever your data is, it's not accurate. And it causes major headaches across an organization. And I don't know if, the audience is probably like, yeah, I feel that. But really, the health of your customer database is a gold mine for this to be actually actionable. How do we approach a healthy customer database? What are those headwinds that we're seeing? How can we work together as two individuals that are both customer facing from a marketing perspective, but then also internally from the systems and the data? How can we work together to get this? But first, let's talk through, I would love to know, Erwin, what are you seeing from the perspective of data and segmentation in some of these challenges that we're seeing?
Yeah, to me, the foundation, I've started 4 customer marketing practices at various B2B SaaS companies. And the one thing though that they all had in common was a poor customer contact database. That's the individuals.
Yeah.
And so frankly, spent the first 6 months at each of these companies getting the database in shape so you can start communicating with customers. And I ran across this report that just came out from PlanHat, which is a customer success platform. And so it's pretty new data. And they asked the question, what are the challenges? And, number one challenge is resources, which makes sense, time, money, budget, et cetera. And then, but the number 2 is all about the data. So if you don't have it, there's a lack of data or it's in bad shape. You can't do segmentation or personalization. If you don't have the right titles, for example, how are you going to do segmentation? If you don't have the right locations, how are you going to do personalization for, let's say events? And if I was an executive I've never had an executive come up to me and say, Erwin, you're our head of customer marketing. How's our database? Executives don't think about that.
Right.
But if they did and asked, well, it's about 70%. Well, we don't really know, to tell you the truth, but I think it's about 70% accurate. If I were an executive, I would say that is not acceptable.
And it's interesting because as the owner of the CRM, usually internally within an organization, it makes me nervous. I personally wouldn't really know the health of our actual business until it returns errors or we get, something back that says, hey, I no longer work at X. And that's just a little, from my point, a little shameful and embarrassing. I don't want to put my stakeholders in a position where they're reaching out to the wrong person or inviting them to an event where they don't live. And so, this is really interesting. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the research that you did here.
Sure.
For healthy databases.
Yeah, and I think customers expect that their vendors will keep their information up to date. Now, I know that's a big ask because you're expecting your vendor to do that, and you're not necessarily telling them that you've moved or you got a new title. But that, if I was a customer, I would expect that vendor would know a little bit about me. And if I were a stakeholder, I want to have confidence in the data so that when I'm trying to communicate, if I'm on the product team and want to do a highly segmented communication to 75 people, I want to make sure I'm getting the right 75 people. Otherwise, I have to send to 750 people, hoping I'm getting the right 75. So the data that I, when I started Repetitos, the very first thing was I asked the people in the community, like, what is the health of your database? And what's interesting is nobody's in blue, so nobody said it was excellent. 20% said it was very good, but 80% are saying it's either not so good, okay, or poor. Who's responsible? I didn't ask for the accuracy of the database. It's just who owns the database. And what my interpretation is that, it's 20% said nobody, which is really bad. But the 46% who said sales and marketing ops, Laura, how would, when that's asked of you, would you say that's sort of the deleting duplicates and paying attention to fields, or would sales and marketing ops actually go in, work on the accuracy itself? Like, do we have the right locations, right titles, et cetera?
Yeah, I actually think that that's pretty accurate from a sales and marketing ops perspective. I would also put CS ops or just rename it into revenue ops because we are responsible for the initial, I would say, pull. Listen, as an operations organization, we're going to try and find where you're at, your fields, whether we're using an enrichment tool or not. We're, making sure that on form fills, or if you're on the website, we are capturing that information because we do want to feed it back to the stakeholders, but we're not always going to get it right. It's really hard to get the accurate attributes of our contacts and customers. And so I do think that it is a shared responsibility between marketing ops or sales ops or CS ops to get maybe 75% of the way there. And then as you were speaking about some of these changes that happen, whether it's on a cadence of biannually or monthly or whomever, whenever you're having those conversations, it's training your team to ask those questions and or making sure that they are updating the CRM, which every stakeholder hates to do. Let's be honest. So it's really a fine balance between those. But as an operations organization, we do say our stakeholders are pretty much responsible for also making sure that it's accurate if they go and see that it is not accurate, and updating that into the system, because that's really the only way that we're going to bridge it over.
I'm a customer community person, a customer marketing person. How do I, RevOps is like they're the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. How do I develop relationships? What's the language? How do I approach them in a way that's not threatening not threatening?
When we think about, you're probably sitting here thinking, well, I don't have a relationship or partnership with my RevOps person. And so how do you start to establish that internally? I am sure that maybe prior to this, you were just like two ships passing in the night, because lo and behold, we actually have very, very similar goals and metrics internally. And so I would start and open the conversation of, hey, can we just meet, because you were either tagged in an OKR and we haven't met yet. And so I just want to sit down with you and try and understand what are some of the goals and metrics that you're held accountable to internally. More than likely, 80% of those are the same goals and metrics between the two of us. It'll either be driving revenue, or a customer qualified lead, or making sure that our gross or net retention is up, and everything that those are like outputs. Really trying to look at the inputs, then that's where the synergy happens. And that's where we can actually make some work together. And it's identifying those common objectives. And so what are the things that we're working on and focusing on? How can we help each other? Because as a customer marketer, you all are brilliant in that world. We are the ones that are just helping to capture data and make it more efficient and effective for action, so that you can go run campaigns and programs and reach out to the community and do crisis emails. So we need to understand what's really, really important to you when in each one of those situations, whether it's a field in a CRM, whether it is data that's over in another database, or it's a process that you need the team to adhere to. We own enablement most of the time as well. Enablement rolls up to revenue operations. And so making sure that the teams and the processes are aligned there. We are all about identifying what's happening in current state and being better. And so what are those actual goals and metrics that we want to track to? Is it getting better open rates? Is it increasing customer qualified leads? Is it going and capturing G2 or NPS or CSAT reviews? Like, how can we help from a revenue operations perspective enable our teams and you with the right data, process, and systems to get there? I think this is such a huge one. Over communication that probably comes up as far as in any conversation, but you'd be surprised at the lack of regular communication that these teams might have together while they're doing very, very similar things. It's almost like opening up those channels of communication is a 1 + 1 = 10, as I always say. There's this natural, maybe how to create a partnership live and with people, but there are also some self-serve resources. So if you're saying, well, I would like to learn more about the revenue operations community, what you all think about the common themes or trends, here's some self-serve RevOps resources.
Erwin, Laura, thank you so much. That's fantastic. The audience is cheering and everyone's loving what you spoke about. It's fantastic stuff. And, I wish you all a best, Erwin, best for your birthday. And Laura, enjoy your time down there. And thank you so much for this great
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
you.